beautiful people, to the Real Collective podcast. As always, I'm your host, Sean Tasse, joined by my illustrious friend, colleague, and mortgage broker extraordinaire, Kyle Miller. Kyle, how you doing today?
Oh, living the dream, buddy. Enjoying an early spring. As much as that
Woo-wee.
could be a bad thing, I'm still enjoying it. So
It's,
I will take it.
definitely in like a lamb. The question is, what will it be out like?
I mm, I still kind of feel like we're gonna get kicked in the face a little bit. Like that could be one of those weird things where Easter you're doing it out in the driveway, having a great day, and
Yeah.
then 3 days later you're shoveling the same driveway.
Well, here's a question though. Would you even shovel if you know it's going to melt like 2 days later? Because I feel like, yeah, we'll probably get a dump, but is it going to be significant? I mean, it always snows in Ottawa in April. Always, 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 always.
Yeah, I do the minimum required. I'll do the minimum required, make sure the car's out, no big deal. And then like am I salting and stuff? Nah, just gonna leave it.
No,
Let it go. It's
yeah,
fine.
I think it's a wrap. Where March break, if you're watching this, it's probably like March break for the kids right now. When we're recording, it's normally about a week before, but we're supposed to be going skiing at Fortune, and I looked at it, and they've got 14 runs open. So Everett's got skiing camp first 3 days of March break, so we'll see what happens. I'd be okay to get some real good spring skiing in before the end of
My
it.
buddy's been up. My buddy just went up to Edelweiss a few times, went up to Tremblant the other day. That's Tremblant, so it's a little bit more, but obviously. But said it's been actually quite good. Been quite good.
Yeah.
So
Well,
he's impressed with it. I haven't made it out yet, but
I'm hoping for. I'm hoping it'll be. I hope it'll just hold out until next week. So it's yeah, man. It is definitely an early spring. We're feeling it in the market too. The snow melts and everybody's like, they're itchy. You can't. Well, I was gonna say you can't ski anymore, but you probably can. You certainly can't golf yet. So it's like, it's spring. Spring is here. It's time. Let's, a lot of people say, oh well, I'll wait until spring. I'll wait until spring. It's like, well, stop waiting, because we had two properties we sold last week, and one of them went into multiple one of them went into multiple offers, and the other one gave us an offer that was so good to stop us from having to go into multiples, because my client said, yeah, this is great, this is what I was hoping to achieve from multiple offers, so we're good. um, and then we've got a
what
few.
do you
Go, yeah.
sorry, what's the price? It interests me to hear that because I'm hearing it too. It's sitting in like with the realtors that I pal around with. So what's the price point on those? Just in your case, what are the price points?
So, well, two totally different price points. One is a an entry level condo in Chateau Vanier, and one is a 4 bedroom detached, uh, you know, 2 story, 2 car garage, uh, 850 to 900 in Riverside South. So two
Yeah,
totally different products, two totally different applications. But what we're finding is that well-priced properties, regardless of what the price point is, as long as they're priced like well, not necessarily, they don't have to be like aggressively priced, but well priced, like priced well enough that's like, yeah, okay, that's going to cause it to sell. They're selling like quick, fast, in a hurry.
and yeah, I feel like that's the key. That's it's always been the key, but that definitely feels like it now. And even that's the chatter that I hear with a lot of realtors on both. Like, and I think the nice thing is that it's on both sides. Like if realtors are telling their clients that's the right price. Like you're not that's it. That's good. Sure, we'll try to go lower, but at the end of the day, if we end up close to there, that's fair.
Yeah,
And that's nice to see because that adds the confidence that I think people have been lacking,
yeah,
right? Through that pandemic, people are just, I think, I'm projecting here. I didn't buy during the pandemic, but I'm projecting. People are just like, I overpaid, I paid too much, meh, didn't get a deal, didn't get a whatever. And everyone's always looking for a deal, but I feel like we've gone to that spot where it's like, nope, that's correct now. Like we are okay, and
yeah.
that's fair. And both sides are agreeing to that, which is a good place to be from a
It's
pricing standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it's more sustainable, right? Like
Yeah.
you'll have more people. I think this year, like we've talked about, I think this year you're going to see more people coming back to the market who've been sitting and waiting on the sidelines. Like, I don't want to play this game. What am I, one of six offers, and paying 100, $200,000 more than what it's listed for? I don't want to play that, right? Versus now, it's like, hey, you know what? You might be one of two or three offers, but you're only paying 10, 20, 30, maybe 40,000. It won't be $50,000 more than what it's worth, because it seems like we always used to say people are shopping in $25,000 increments, but now it seems like they're shopping in $50,000 increments. Like if you've got a
Hmm.
pre-approval up to 650, you're not buying a $700,000 house. So if you're listing at 650, you're not selling for 700. You might sell for 680, right? But if you
I
list
see.
but if you list at 699 and you don't hit, you might have to drop it down. And if you have to drop it down, you're going to drop it below 680. You're going to drop down to, 669. So it's like you're almost better even still to price a little bit less. Like if you think you're in a $50,000 range, give or take, you're almost better to sell to list it lower in that price point than a little bit higher.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
or you sit on the market and you sit and you wait for whatever it is, 2 months. I think it's 2.7 months is the average days on market for a residential or an apartment, like a detached or an apartment. And I think it's like 2 months, just under 2 months for a townhouse or a semi right now. I just looked at all the numbers
Really?
from February. Yeah, that's average days on market
Wow.
for the
That
places.
seems odd. It seems odd to in the same sentence say, here's here's two deals we just did, they're both in multiples. It went like lickety split, and then say, yeah, but average days on market's 60 days. How does I don't that's just the
Uh,
oddest thing to me.
we're better than average, is what I'm going to say.
There it is. Just laid that up for you there. Take that. Right out. Yeah.
Shout out.
Beauty.
Yeah. But no, here's the thing. It all comes down to what the client is willing to do, right? Some clients are motivated to, hey, let's blow this out the door, let's get it sold quick. Okay, well then here's the strategy. Some clients say, no, you know what, we'll try it on. We want to see, we want to see if we can get more, and we think that by pricing it higher, we're going to get a little bit more. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I think if you're going the strategy of listing it higher, you can't be wishy-washy about it. You have to be a little bit like, yep, we're gonna stick to our guns, we're gonna hold tight with this number, and we're gonna negotiate, fiercely. Otherwise, you have to play that come down game. If you play that come down game, you might as well have started at the lower price, right? So
Yeah. 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 I see.
different
Hmm.
strategies, and the different strategies are based on the different needs of different clients. So yeah, that's what we're saying. Not at all what we wanted to talk about today. We were going to talk a little bit about Bill 23, which I incorrectly kept calling Bill C-23. It's not Bill C-23, it's Bill
No, don't
23.
do that.
But before we get into it, remember, as always, to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might be interested in this kind of information. As well, you can download on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks very much. You can go below, download the buyer guide, the seller guide, or schedule an appointment with Kyle or I in those Calendly links below. Bill 23, Kyle, how do you do a lot of work with investors?
Um, yeah, I don't want to say a lot. I don't want to say a lot. But I have actually I've started moving my content that way, and I'm also getting educated more on different strategies for investors. I got some cool stuff that I'm going to be putting out shortly, because of just the sheer amount, just the way rates are and things like that. And there's so much interesting things that can be done financially using your rental property, that it's not that that position the right way. I'm like, oh wow, even for me, I'm like, that's neat, and like that's cool, and numbers tell the story. Like it's part of my mantra of just like get out of your feelings and get into the data, and seeing it, I'm like, this is cool of how to use that. So that's a Kyle way of answering. I work with investors, yes, but not a ton.
You're
If I got there in the last minute and a half.
I think sorry. I think you're alluding to like the Smith maneuver and cash damming and that kind of stuff, right? In terms of using your rental property to pay down your primary faster? Question mark?
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, big time. We're
Yeah,
getting it's quite a wild. Not yeah, the catch damming stuff is cool. It's
yeah.
very very cool. Yeah,
We had your pal Steph Edwards on here a long time ago, like pre
right.
before your days, and she was explaining that. So if you want to see that episode and nerd out on how to use a secondary property to make your primary pay down faster, and your monthly expenses go down as well, watch that video. It's pretty sweet. So what we're going to talk about today specifically is this new bill, which is Bill 23. The idea being that with a single residential house, so a detached house, so the first, segment we talked about where there's 2.7 months worth of inventory, people are taking that property and they're turning it into 3 residential units. And you're legally allowed to do that without any holdup from the city now. That's the thing that investors are really leaning towards. The buyers that I'm working with right now, the investor buyers, are leaning on that specific bill. In the past, I'd say maybe 5-7 years ago, all of the buyers were looking for properties they could turn into SDUs, secondary dwelling units. So you take a, typical bungalow that you'd find in Ottawa with, 3 bedrooms upstairs at that 1,100, 1,200 square feet, and you put a unit in the basement. Ta-da, you've done an SDU. And at the peak of the pandemic, like people were buying those properties for 350 to 400, like in 2017, 2018, 2019. At the height of the pandemic, after they spent, call it $200,000 in the basement, they were selling them for 800,000, 900,000 in some instances if they were bigger places, right? Like 4-bedroom places. But now you can even do more. Instead of doing 2 units with an SDU, you can do 3 units. So what our buyers are looking for now is big shacks. They're looking for big square footage. They're looking for a 2-story house, not a bungalow, with 4 bedrooms upstairs. And when you have 4 bedrooms upstairs, naturally you've got big square footage, right? So you've got 4 bedrooms upstairs, and then theoretically you have the same amount of space on the ground floor and the same amount of space in the basement. So if you've got essentially a big box, right, then you take your upstairs unit, and now you've got to put stairs. You've got to put two methods of egress from each unit for a 3 unit. That's one of the rules about it. So they have to figure out. You've got to figure out the stairs. You've got to figure out egress and ingress, how to get in and out. But you can make yourself a 2-bedroom unit, a 2-bedroom unit, and a 2-bedroom unit. Second floor, main floor, basement. And you can rent 3 2-bedroom units for a lot more than you can rent 2 3-bedroom units.
Yeah.
Right? Or if you find yourself with an SDU that's got 4 bedrooms up, the number of bedrooms is the piece that's important, right? You can put as many as 4 bedrooms into a unit without having to, really, cross any T's or dot any I's. So if you can find yourself a bungalow with 4 bedrooms upstairs, 4 bedrooms downstairs, and a detached garage, then you could change that detached garage into an ADU, an ancillary dwelling unit. So SDU is a secondary dwelling unit, ADU is ancillary dwelling unit. Normally the ADU is outside of the house, right? Coach house we've been talking about. But if you already have the structure, let's say you've got a 25 by 25 2-car garage, you can easily convert that into another unit. That's right. Easily. It's not that it's easy, but it's possible, and you already have the structure, right? The structure is none of this
simple, but it's not easy.
Right. None of this is necessary. It's not inexpensive. It's not easy, but it's what investors are looking at instead of doing an STU. The reason is your rent on an STU might be, for 2 3-bedroom units, let's call it maybe $2,200-$2,300 a month. But for 3 2-bedroom units, it's probably going to be something like $6,000 a month. Right?
Yeah.
So
I think it's going to be interesting to see people definitely start going that way, especially with just the city of Ottawa's plan to just, we're going up. We're not going wide anymore, right? They're going dense.
Yeah.
They're allowing us to go dense. They're allowing us to go high.
Yeah.
And that's that. They're not going wide more than they already have, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? There's a lot of pros to it, which is good, but there's also some cons. And I think in the second half, we'll talk about, both the pros and the cons from like a real estate perspective, from like a value perspective, a neighborhood perspective, from a bank perspective, from a future value perspective, all of these things, there's good things about it. There's bad things about it. So like, if you've got, hey, here's a benefit for you, you've got that, that's great. But there's always going to be a trade-off, right? So what's the trade-off? What's the piece that we're missing? What did we run into in the past with SDUs? And what can we figure, hey, that's going to be an issue going forward with this bill 23.
Yeah, and it's going to be, and as we typically do, especially within real estate, but in most things, we're going to be fighting people's own mentality, people's own mentality, right? Like we'll talk about the value stuff in the second half, but I remember doing a trade show, and I had a gentleman roll up, and he was like, "Hey, we were talking about his residence. He's like, yeah, I put like $150,000 worth of solar panels on the top of the house. Like he was an early adopter. And he's like, and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, how much is the house worth? He's like, 150, 175,000. I'm like, cool. And he's like, but now, I'm going to sell that thing for like 6. I'm like, you're probably not though. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, I just did $150,000. They can sell it back. The house actually makes the money. He was literally regurgitating what he was sold on the brochure for solar panels. And I'm not against solar panels. I'm not against what he did. The mentality was, I put in 150, it's going to return 100x. And it's like, it is not, sir. The bank doesn't give a shit about your solar panels. It means nothing. What about the money? There is no money. As far as they're concerned, it doesn't exist. Right? So, no, sir, that is not the case. Your house is still worth exactly what you had it worth before. Sorry. And then you punch me. No, I'm kidding. But it's just like, but like that's right there. Like right there, that sets the stage for where people's minds are going to be at, and the beat down and re-education we will have to give people on this. Not saying it's a bad idea, just saying there's going to be a thought process.
Leave it to the two sales guys, to know like, oh, you got sold.
Oh, but yeah, we talk about you at the meetings, dude. We talk about you at the meetings. Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately.
All right, let's take a quick break. We'll pick it back up on the flip side. As always, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share this with someone who you think might like this type of conversation, and you can download the buyer or seller guides below, or book an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly links below. We'll catch you on the flip side. Ciao. This episode of the Real Collective podcast is brought to you by Real Collective Marketing, the marketing agency that specializes in the unique needs and budgets of small to medium-sized businesses. We provide turnkey marketing solutions that get results. We become an extension of your team and act as your virtual marketing department, designing and implementing cost-effective strategies that will help grow your business. You can find out more today at www.realcollectivemarketing.ca. Now, here's your hosts, Sean and Kyle. Welcome back, you beautiful people, to the second half of the Real Collective podcast. I hope you loved hearing from our sponsor, Real Collective Marketing. Great people over there. I'm at least half of them.
Like those guys. Guys.
Yeah. This is all. What's the right word for it? I don't know. Anyways,
hit that shameless self-promotion.
That's right. Shameless. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who you think might like this. You can book an appointment with Kyle or I in the Calendly links below, or download the buyer or seller guides. Bill 23. Kyle, tell us all about the pros and cons of Bill 23 from a not a marketing perspective, from a financial perspective. What's the bank going to think about your, oh my God, I'm making $6,000 a month and I only spent $800,000 on the property, or whatever it is? What's the bank going to say about that?
Yeah, the toughest thing is that anything bank related and any I don't call it advantage, but change, right? It's with the banks, it's like trying to turn the Titanic. And we all know how that ended, unfortunately. So it's a thing where the city and you as the investor are going to see the value in that change way sooner than any of the banks will, right? And what they're going to say, and what they typically say, is, hey, go get us an appraisal. Guaranteed that's going to happen. And then what happens is that the appraisers out there trying to justify the value that you expect on your property. And it's tough to do that when you're the only one. Like, give this how you're going to benefit from this. And this could be bad, is you're going to benefit long term, right? The investors that have the cash and the time to hold on are going to see the greatest benefit, right? Because they're going to be the ones who say, hey, we built this with the cash. We are technically, we're probably going to see them being underwater, if you will, from a value to cash standpoint, right? We invested 200, but only got 100 grand back on our value until there's more of them doing it. And then once those start to sell, now you have a basis for value, right? You're like, here you go. Why? Well, because 3 more sold like this. So the market has now said that's the value of this property. But it took till a bunch of people did it and then sold them for it to get there, right? Now it's oversimplified, but truly that's what happens. I mean, we still see it today. I've got a property right now where the client did an infill and is throwing up semi-detached property.
Yeah.
Great. But they haven't severed and they don't want to sever. But we did the appraisal. We got 2 values. We got a value as severed and a value as a side-by-side double.
Yeah.
And in that area, there are very little to no side-by-side doubles. So the value on that property without it being severed is 60% less than it would be if it was severed and you're 2 separate properties.
Yeah.
But the mentality is, but I don't want to sever, it costs money, and the value's there. And it's like, well, no, it's not. Not because I said so, because the market said so. So not my fault. But that's the thing. And that's where we're starting to see, like, that's the same thought process as throwing up these triplexes. I've said it to my wife. We got this house on our street. Sorry, I'm on a rant, but we got this house on our street that this older gentleman has just like been like, peace. Like the city comes and cuts his grass because he just doesn't show up anymore. And it's got weeds growing out of it and everything. And someday that will sell. And I can see it where someone buys that and does something that is not in our neighborhood, which is makes it a semi or turns it into a triplex or something like that. And there's going to be a lot of, I'm anticipating a lot of like NIMBY type attitudes of just, hey man, that's not cool. And it's like, meh. But that same person who does that might sit there and see dollar signs and going to say, and the appraiser is going to say, I need you to find me another triplex in a location like this in Orleans. And it doesn't exist. Right. Now you're the one. You are the most unique property. And if there's one thing that'll kill your value, it's unfortunately being unique, which is so weird.
Yeah.
But it's true.
So here's the question, and this is what all the investors are going to clap back with.
Yeah.
Then why don't you just use the income approach to value?
And you know what? I don't know, because I get it, and that feels like that's always more of a commercial side of things, right? Because that's what commercial does. Do they not? It's just basically.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's like 3 basic main ways to value a property. You can use a CMA, comparative market analysis. That's what we're talking about now. Income approach is how much money does the property make? And based on how much it makes, you run it through a cap rate and you determine what the value is. That is used certainly a lot more in commercial. And then the last is replacement value. What would it cost for me to build the same house on the same property today, right? Like those are the 3 basic main fundamental ways to value a property. I mean, you can do it different ways, but those are the ones that they sort of teach you in like real estate school. So it'll
be interesting to see how the banks react to that, because that would probably be the simplest methodology to change it. But again, the thing is the bank's perspective is always, you're going to fail and this isn't going to work. So if we had to sell this property tomorrow, what could we sell it for? Right. And that would be without the rent or whatever.
Yeah.
So and people are going to say, well, why? Because the bank is not a property manager.
Right. Yeah.
They are not property managers. They don't want it. They don't want the problem.
Yeah.
So that'll be it'll be the easiest switch to make. It'll also be the most difficult switch for them to make.
We ran into the same problem when we started to sell these SDUs, the secondary dwelling units, and they were just like, no, you're a bungalow. Well, no, we've got a full on a second legal suite in the basement. And the appraisal came back, and I remember this specifically. There was a place on Hague, and I told my client, I'm like, hey, look, if we wanted to sell this right now, we could easily sell it for, at the time, I think it was like 600, six or 650 or seven. Like it was like a high number. And the appraisal came back, it was like 550. He's like, why did the appraisal come back so low? I'm like, I'm not telling you what it's going to appraise for. I'm telling you what we could sell it for. And he's like, well, if I can't get the appraisal value that you were talking about, it doesn't make sense anymore. So then sell it. So we sell it. And we sold it for exactly the number that I said he was going to get, because the investors know. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. This is great. Build us another one, right? The investors all know, but the bank wasn't there. And I think that was like pre-pandemic. That was like 2018, 2019, something like that. And then during the pandemic, I mean, people were just like, yeah, here, you want money? Here you go. There was another investor lender in the news recently, a group called the Winrose Group, that just was lending out money on promissory notes, and they built up this whole empire of like 400 something properties all in northern Ontario that was just all bought on promissory notes, and the prom notes will not be repaid because this company is just underwater. So like $1 billion. So it's like securities fraud, essentially. Like the broker is like under investigation for security fraud. So
this where there's two things there. So I'm gonna address one first before
sorry,
we get to
I went in a totally
yeah, you went way over. But they're both actually it's two interesting topics. So the first one is back to back when SDUs were kind of new, right? Yeah. But they changed hands, things happened.
Yes.
The data caught up,
yep.
And now you can get an appraisal on a property that says, hey, it's worth this today. If you add an SDU, it'll be worth this.
That's right.
So that's changed. Like it happens. It just takes time. So where are you in that cycle of that happening? And that's why if you hold on to it, you'll probably get your money, but you're going to get your money back. You're going to get your value, right?
There only recently was a button on our matrix to say, is this an SDU? And this is like a 2-year-old button, whereas SDUs have been happening for years before. Mm-hmm. So once it gets into organized understanding, then it becomes a little bit better. So yeah.
And I wonder too, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I wonder too if that's also because this now becomes a revenue stream, right? That property worth whatever it is, property taxes are not going to be the same, right? Property tax is going to go up, which just goes to one place. So once they start to see how that works, they'll be like, yep, let's go. Let's see that happen. And they'll adjust, and those values will come. And that's going to be the thing. That's money.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast, because the rates, we've been talking about this, right? The rates, the property tax rates, everybody's going to get reassessed this year, apparently, and then it'll be a phase in. But yeah, there's a whole other conversation there about property tax. Maybe we'll cover that next time.
That's a real good one. We should talk about that, because you can re-amortize your mortgage. You can't re-amortize your property taxes.
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting.
Property tax next time. I think that's important. All right. So yeah, I mean, look, there's certainly going to be some pros and cons if you are building a triplex or 3 units on a single family lot. If you're interested in doing that, we're getting really good at finding the right types of places for you to be able to do it. I just looked at one this weekend. I think it's a great fit. I'm just waiting for the buyers to do it. And there's another off-market property that I'm looking at right now. So we've got our eyes on things that make sense, that should work in this regard. But you've got to be able to have the cash to be able to fund it and to hold that for a long time. Talk to Kyle. He's got the cash, Brian.
And we've got the lenders who are going to do those deals. I think the other biggest thing, and this goes into, again, this could branch off into something totally different. Construction financing is its own beast.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll straight up say it, and I won't even apologize for it. Banks do it terribly. They do it terribly. But if you're getting into construction and going to take on this project, realize that's what it is. It is a project. It will cost you money to even get your foot in the door, but the payoff can be phenomenal. Right? Phenomenal. So just be wary of that. That's the first step. You will spend money before you even know if it's possible.
Yeah.
But it can be awesome.
That's it, man. It's risk reward. So as always, hit that like button, share this with someone who you think might like this, subscribe to the channel, download us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, download the buyer or seller guide. We should even do an investor guide, be a nice move. And you can book an appointment with either Kyle or I in the Calendly links below. Thanks again to our sponsor, the beautiful people at Real Collective Marketing. And
Look at
until
that guy.
next time, keep it real.
Collective.